Fantastic. Welcome to today's OSN Skills Collaborative Showcase. We are so excited to have everybody here. I know that we are getting together here on a different day and time than we normally do, and that's because we've got some friends across the Pacific, and we want them to be here to share the exciting work that they have been doing. And we want to especially say thank you to them because it's bright and early in the morning there. For the rest of us, it's late afternoon or evening. And so we appreciate you all being here today. So we want to take a moment to say appreciation for funding provided by Walmart that helps to make a lot of the OSN activities and endeavors possible. And this is a great thing to celebrate. So thank you, Walmart. We'd like to take just a quick moment here to say that for today's showcase, as typical, we will be collecting questions in the chat. So if you have questions for our various teams or panelists, please place them into the chat. And at the end of today's presentation, we're going to have a nice chunk of time to be able to talk about all the questions that you have about all the amazing work that these 7 different teams have been conducting. And so do place those questions into the chat. So who or what is OSN? Well, we're a coalition of employers, education providers, policymakers, military members, nonprofits, and other members from across the globe dedicated to advancing skills-based education and hiring. And this Skills Collaborative project is really the work that OSN really helps to conduct and to really support across the globe, adding to multiple kind of construction sites within the skills ecosystem. We invite you to join a work group, participate with us in the open skills conversation with LinkedIn, Twitter, we're on YouTube. And we also want to take just a quick moment to let everybody know that OSN is going to be in San Diego on April 4th through the 6th at the ASU GSV Summit. So if you happen to be in attendance in San Diego those few days in April, make sure you come by and you say hi. We're going to be there and we'd love to meet you face to face. So with that, I want to just take a moment to say that our 2022 Skills Summit will be this fall, and we have dates coming. So do plan to participate with us in our kind of national gathering that's going to occur this fall. So with that, this is our second cohort of team projects. We are so excited for these 7 amazing teams and the work that they have been doing. They have been working on their projects since the beginning of January. So this today is a culmination of several months of activity. And to lead us into this conversation and to guide us through the work of our 7 Skills Collaborative teams, I want to now turn things over to Colin Reynolds from the Learning Economy Foundation, who LEF has done an absolutely fantastic job in helping to facilitate these skills collaborative projects, and we so appreciate them as a partner in this endeavor. So now I'm going to turn it over to Colin.
Thanks, Christian. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another showcase highlighting some of the incredible work that has been done across the globe. Building off of some of the success from the 2021 Spring Skills Pilots, the Open Skills Network launched the Skills Collaboratives. And so this phase focused on engaging and driving adoption of rich skill descriptors and to encourage the implementation and use of the Open Skills Management Tool, or OSMIT, as we love to call it. So today, we are going to introduce you to the leads of those skills collaboratives and give them an opportunity to share a little bit about the work that was accomplished over the last 3 months. As Christian mentioned, the Learning Economy Foundation team was thrilled to be able to partner with OSN and make some new partners across the world to help further this work. So without further ado, we'll give you a look at the headshots of those leads. And some of them have some team partner or two that is going to help highlight some of the work that they did. Over this 4-month period, we had 7 teams from 3 different countries, and there were really 3 goals for each of these skills collaborative teams. And one was to create new RSDs, then to reuse and modify existing RSDs, and then for some of our teams to stand up their own instance of the Open Skills Management Tool. Ultimately, that tool is an open source tool that anybody can download and deploy and to support their use of RSDs and implementation across their network. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Margot Griffith. She is with the Edalex team, and the focus of theirs was called Spanning Boundaries. So she'll give a little bit of oversight into their project work. Margot.
Thank you, Colin, and good morning, everybody. So I'm going to talk for a little while and then pass it on to Melinda O'Halloran, who's my colleague here at Edalex. So before I get started, I really want to say a big shout out to our partners, Professor Josephine Lang at the University of Melbourne, who really was jumping in and embracing RSDs with such enthusiasm. I'd also like a shout out to Naomi Boyer at Education Design Lab for her generosity and continued support, and she was instrumental in getting this project up and running. So our project Spanning the Boundaries came from the idea of what would a common skills language look like in the Australian context. How could it span both geographical boundaries but also sector boundaries? So we have a deep history in Australia of competency-based education, particularly in a vocational sector. And alongside that, we've got a bank of really rich skills data, but it's kind of locked in that vocational sector. So we were wondering, you know, how could we leverage this existing skills data, make it available and accessible across all of the sectors? So, you know, K-12, vocational and higher ed. And we were really wondering, could RSDs be that translation piece? So for us, our problems were, you know, building that awareness of RSDs in the Australia Pacific region and that cross-sector translation piece. How could we leverage that existing Australian skills data? Could we contextualize RSDs to Australian frameworks, occupations and job data? But also, what would that look like at the end of this skills collaborative? How could we preserve those RSDs? Where would they sit? How could we share them? And what does that scaling and permanence really look like? So next slide, thanks, Colin. So yeah, what we did actually is then we created an RSD collection for the University of Melbourne in their microcert, which is their post-professional micro-credentialing program. And when I say we, it's the royal we, it's actually Josephine that did all the work. We also collaborated with Education Design Lab to leverage their existing expertise in RSDs, and they were invaluable. We did collaborate with our wonderful WGU architect, Sherry, on mapping those existing RSDs, both the WGU and Education Design Lab, back into the University of Melbourne microcerts. We also explored in a rather ambitious project to see what it would look like if we set up a complementary RSD platform in Open Aquella with an international context. And by that, Open Aquella is our open source digital content repository. It's got 20 years of development behind it. It's used widely here in Australia, but also across the globe. And so what would it look like if we set up an RSD module within Open Aquella that might actually make it easier for both our current customers, but the wider Australian context to adopt, understand, and absorb RSDs into their curriculum. We also wanted to explore the incorporation of RSDs into our other platform, which is called Credentialate, and that's a skills infrastructure platform. So you can see that skills are really our DNA, and it made sense for us to want to explore rich skill descriptors in the way that we have. And a final point is what we wanted to then also explore is, as well as standing up the RSD module and also standing up an OSMIT instance, we did both. What would that look like to bring all the functionality of that's already existing within Open Aquella around workflow, version control, multi-tenancy, harvesting, federation, et cetera, What would that look like if we could bring that to an RSD module? So I'm going to stop there and hand over to my colleague, Melinda.
Very good overview of the project, but I will talk about a couple of the learnings and outcomes that we had going into this project. We didn't know too much about RSDs, and coming out of the project we knew an awful lot, and so did our partners. We found that sometimes we interpreted and used RSD metadata fields a little differently from other organizations, and we found that that was okay. We decided that we'd need to use them for a local context that suited the University of Melbourne, their learners, and their current and potential employers of those learners. And that was a lot of fun, working out how to contextualize RSDs to the Australian environment. So we shared those learnings with the project collaborative, and I think everybody thought that was a bit of fun as well. We also discovered, as Margot said, that local taxonomies were going to become important. So local frameworks, anything to do with job market data, we contextualized to the Australian market, and we used Open Aquila to do that. Next slide, please. So our next steps to wrap up are to keep working on our RSD inventory, our RSD libraries. Through the work done in this project, we've been able to broadly scope and create some use cases for developing RSD import and association capabilities in our credential evidence platform, Credentialate. So we're going to continue working on that. And we're also going to continue working with OSN on the future direction of RSDs, which we're really excited about. Just to sum up, we've created a network diagram of where RSDs in Open Aquila fit in our environment. So you can see there that the RSDs will feed into our credential evidence platform, Credentialate, and at the end of the journey, we will produce a rich metadata for our learners that they can use to talk about their skills in the marketplace.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melinda and Margot, and really just want to highlight some of the incredible work there using another tool to help manage RSDs that was not OSMIT, and exploring some of the crosswalking throughout your project. So thank you so much for sharing. Next, we are going to move on to automated parsing of curriculum to RSDs with our team from IQ4 that was led by Ionatan Sala, and he will be sharing a little bit about their work. And also speaking will be Kyle Hamilton, another member of the IQ4 project team. Ionatan.
Thanks, Colin. So hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining today. My name is Ionatan Sala. I'm a software engineer at IQ4, alongside my colleague, Kyle Hamilton, Chief Innovations and Data Science Officer at IQ4. We will be sharing our approach in automating the alignment and mapping of skills to courses. As many of you know, trying to map skills to curriculum can be a very long, manual, and tedious process. We've come to find this out once again when we recently had to manually map skills to one of our courses. In collaboration with the OSN to help automate this process, we've decided to build a tool that integrates with OSMIT to pull, align, and recommend RSDs to map to courses, uses multiple skill sources and frameworks to map and align skills to courses, uses ML to automate the mapping process by recommending skills, and provides the ability to export map skills. We'd like to now bring you through a couple of simple steps in which you can map skills to your courses. Next slide, please. Thank you. As you can see on the screen, you can start by adding your courses into the system. Input all relevant information associated with your course and hit save. After you've created your course, you can start mapping skills. I'd like to now pass it over to Kyle to go over this process with you.
Thank you, Ionatan. Yeah, so next slide, please. Great, so once you've entered all of your kind of course description, and ultimately this will be an upload in the next iteration, where we'll be parsing that document automatically. At this stage, you are searching for skills by typing in either skills that you know that are in your curriculum, or skills that you would like to add to the curriculum. The returned skills then are skills that come from a number of taxonomies. You have a choice of those taxonomies. You can choose to use every taxonomy in the universe, or you can select your own very unique and specialized taxonomy for your specific use case. What we then do is, if you enter in, for example, if you look on the right, information security policies, we recommend RSDs and other skills which are semantically similar to your input skill. So this model that we have was trained on millions of job recs in the wild in the last couple of years, and it actually performs really well in terms of performance on accuracy. It's I don't know if folks are familiar with the latest kind of technologies in natural language processing, but in the last few years, there's been quite a lot of advances in the performance of these large language models, and we're finding that they're working extremely well. In addition to that, though, we want to help we want to build intelligence into our models from the expertise of the folks that will be using our systems. And as we sort of work towards open sourcing some of these, some of our modules, we are seeking the help of subject matter experts in sort of annotating and tagging skills and similarities between skills. And this then in turn will help us to build better models, which will help our users to build better curricula. And again, these are all kind of based on what industry demand is. So it's all kind of tied together, and it's sort of a feedback loop that sort of keeps getting better and better and better with time. Yeah, so go ahead, Ionatan, and just finish up there. I think maybe previous slide.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Kyle. So after you've gone through the mapping process, you can export and manage your skills. So from here, you can export your skills collection, view and update your skills. If we can go to the next slide, please. So for future development of the tool, we are planning to add the ability to ingest course documents, as Kyle was mentioning, manage your skills taxonomies, and integrate with the IQ4 projects tool. We will continue to refine our ML models and continue conducting user testing and collecting feedback to improve the tool. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ionatan and Kyle. Just fascinating to watch the project develop, specifically around the use of machine learning and AI. Very, very awesome to see a team stepping into that space. So thank you for your overview. Next up, we have Mark Keough in the Perpetual Professional Development group. Mark is with Chorus Connect and Intrinsic Learning. Mark.
Thanks, Colin, and also would like to acknowledge that we cooperate and work with Edalex. So you've heard some of the stories so far, and also with Flinders University. I'm an adjunct academic with Flinders University, so some of this work will be recorded through that platform. But just moving on to the next slide, Chorus Connect is a interesting group that manages school chaplains and non-clinical community workers. So they have a whole bunch of people in airports and shopping centers who essentially connect and refer people. And it's a very effective model of providing people with assistance on the ground. But they're also a very good example of what I call an orphaned industry. That is an industry that is smallish and not served by the traditional education providers. They're just not an economic group to serve, and something that Intrinsic Learning focuses on is those kinds of groups. We've found there's dozens and dozens and dozens of those groups who feel they're not getting formal professional development support or even undergraduate and graduate training or vocational training support for their workers. So that's the context. We started this 3-year project in October, and it just beautifully aligned with our desire to use a standardized skills framework. As Margot mentioned in the earlier slide, Australia has a 40-year history of a national skills framework. So the notion of micro-credentialing in Australia has been around for 40 years because you can get right down to a competency element that is national standard, supported by all employers, all industries, all states, all education providers, both public and private. So we've had national standardized skills framework for about 40 years. So what we're looking to do, though, it's not machine readable, it's kludgy, it's almost unusable in its current form. And so what we're trying to do is use the RSD framework to give it some machine readability and move forward. So stage 1 of this we're releasing in July 2022. And I'm going to quickly show you, a lot of what Margot said earlier, we're also following along the same lead, but doing it from a completely different perspective. So the earlier project was about a university's move into micro-credentialing. This is about what I call orphaned industries, people who are underserved. So you could see the applicability in all sorts of settings for this work. And the key part of our project is recognition of informal learning. So we're integrating both formal and informal learning into a common platform using RSDs. We're doing that using a WorldLearn LMS, talent management system. We're doing that with Credentialate, and people end up with a Badger outcome. So we'll just move to the next slide. This is the core process. We're also using OpenAquella. We actually made a choice to not use OSMET, actually, just for time. And we chose to use OpenAquella. I've worked with Aquella for 10 years, and it's an excellent repository with sophisticated search and workflows, embedded workflows. So it's an excellent repository system. And Margot and her team at Edalex have assisted us, and we've also used the RSD framework that they created for that. We've used the WorldLearn talent management system for the user experience, the learning journey, and it has an evidence gathering app. So we can actually gather live evidence from a learner. And the model we have includes learner self-recognition. So we go off and gather learning evidence. Learners participate in learning objects. They bring their formal and informal learning together. It's governance and audit aware, so we follow any number of governance rules that might be required. And in Australia, there's a national system of governance for vocational education. And then it ends up being back at a learner-employer dashboard. I must say, our emphasis is not to serve the institution, it's to serve the learner and the employer. And I feel like that's a big philosophical question here that we need to address, that so many of these projects, so much of this is being driven by institutions, which inevitably means it perpetuates the institution's stance in this. When we talk about the need for learner-centric education, but it becomes a bit rhetorical when we don't actually make the systems learner-centric. So our attempt here is to make this very learner-centric and to recognise informal learning. We then put that back into Credentialate, and we create a skills base or skills file for the individual, which can augment their resume. So moving on to the next slide, I just want to show you some screens and also offer, and I'm sure Margot will do the same, we'll happily continue any conversations after this project with anyone who's interested. We're really, really thrilled to be a part of this community. We know we bring a challenge to OSN in saying, did you really start with a global vision in mind? And what does that mean for you? But we hope we can participate and support this initiative. So this is the OpenAquella dashboard. I'm just doing a simple search for a skill, but you can see it comes up with contextualized search support. The next slide I think we could do. This is actually a RSD record within OpenAquella. So it shows the complete metadata, shows the owner in nice bright colors, and also all of the other relevant material. You'll notice there under the alignment names, that code is part of the national skill element, or what we call the Australian Quality Training Framework, but it's a skill element within the whole national competency system called Work Effectively with Others. So we already have standardized language and standardized codification. The problem is it's not machine readable, and it's not properly used and searchable. So that's what the opportunity is for us, to bring those standard data straight in as RSDs, and we've modeled that, and that's what you're seeing here. You're seeing 40-year-old record converted for RSD use in Open Aquila. So just moving on, the skills record is the outcome for the student. This is a picture of one skill element and a gold standard. We've created a standardized approach, classic bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and they all have meaning. And this one is for determining the needs of people with mental health issues. I think there's one more slide. No, there isn't. That's it. So it's been delightful. Thank you to Colin and the team and Duncan and to Sherry and all the people we've been directly associated with. It's been a fantastic journey for us. We hope it's one that doesn't end, and we look forward to continuing to work with all of the people interested in RSDs at OSN. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mark. And I just want to highlight there that you mentioned the orphan industries, and I think there are many here that represent groups that are outside of what we think of as the traditional academic route. And I think that is a place that skills really can empower the individual users in a way that is really absent right now in the digital world with verification and all that. And just want to encourage people. I see questions coming through in the chat, which is great. Panelists, feel free to continue responding in the chat. We will have a little bit of a Q&A there at the end. So any questions that don't get answered in the chat, we'll share with our panelists when we get to the end. So thank you again, Mark. Moving on, we have Michelle Cho with Gladeo. They were collaborating with the Los Angeles County Department of Arts and Culture to help sort of navigate a platform for the creative economy. So I'll hand it over to Michelle.
Thank you, Colin. Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle Cho, and I'm so glad and happy to be here. Before I start, I just want to say thank you to the LEF team. I know it's hard to organize all of us in different time zones, different countries, and you guys did such a great job, and thank you so much for your support. And I specifically want to thank our skills architect, Michael Whalen, I think he's on the call, for all of his support and definitely his patience, because I did ask a lot of, I guess, dumb questions, and he was so patient with me. So before I talk about the project with the LA County Department of Arts and Culture, I do want to give a little bit of context to who we are, Gladeo, and why they wanted to partner with us to help learners discover creative careers. So Christian, it's a short 70-second video.
The Gladeo platform uses videos, storytelling, an extensive digital library of informational interviews, and resource recommendations that are personalized to each user.
It is a culturally relevant approach. And that storytelling piece is so important because one of the things that many students of minority populations or many underserved students who are marginalized from relatable role models is that they know that they want a career, but they don't know anyone in that career. They just saw something on TV.
Always want to get more underrepresented groups to focus on STEM careers, whether it's underrepresented by gender or race or SES. Most of the other career platforms out there have unfortunately still been telling the mainstream narrative. And what Gladeo is doing is really disrupting that.
And so this whole world opens up of who they can be. And then with the click of a button, they can tap into somebody who looks and sounds just like them, who came from where they came from, and who's telling their story. And then they are well on their way to becoming that story. And so Gladeo fills the inspiration gap, fills the information gap, it fills the access gap, the role model gap, all in one single platform. And it's a very humble approach to this very important work that all educators have to do, is to architect the human potential of our students. That's what this education work is all about. And that's what Gladeo is about.
Essentially, we started off as a virtual career day. We were a career inspiration and exploration platform. And a lot of it was trying to mimic a career day, not just talk about the job, but talk about, the childhood of the interviewee, the motivations, the inspirations, the failures, the resilience and stuff like that. And it's used basically as a tool inside the classroom, both in high school and community colleges and colleges, to mimic that, because a lot of the counselors have trouble getting people to volunteer for career days. And obviously it depends on the network of that school or that teacher or that counselor. So the LA County Department of Arts and Culture, we partnered with them because they wanted a kind of a configured platform just for the creative careers. We're in California, we're in Los Angeles. And what was so crazy was the school districts were going to slash arts budgets. And so I think a lot of it had to do with they thought that there weren't careers that paid well in the creative industry. As we all know, that's false, and especially in California. And so the overall project was to create this creativecareers.gladeo.org. And it basically starts off with a virtual career day, and then it actually guides them through the career development process, from identifying programs, courses, and then connecting them to networking events, work-based learning opportunities, internships, and through the first job. So it's supposed to kind of like travel with them through this whole academic process, the education process. Specifically for OSN, we were identifying and describing the skills necessary for each of the creative career pathways. We started with 50 career pathways, both hard and soft skills. But I thought we could do all of them through this 4-month project. No, we did too. So, I mean, Danielle was like, just start with something you can do it really well, and then use learnings from that, and then obviously replicate it. So we started off with the WG Skills database and identifying the hard and soft skills for a graphic designer and the UX designer. And then we put together those hard and soft skills, and we started the employer validation process. I'd like to say we tried to start the employer validation process, which will bring me to the next slide of the learnings that we found out. So next slide. A key part of this platform is we wanted to get confirmation from the employers, and there's tons of employers with creative careers here in Los Angeles. And I found that it's very difficult to work directly with employers' HR departments. It's better if we just went straight to the employee, because then there's like, we're getting rid of the middleman, and then it's not a priority for them, and they were never responding, So I just had our team email them on LinkedIn. And what we did is we found the people who said they want to volunteer, because on LinkedIn it says, I'm looking for volunteer opportunities. And we found those people were more likely to email and were extremely helpful in validating this. And we feel like if it wasn't from the employer, we needed at least 5. And so we sent out 50 emails. We got about 10. So we were able to validate for graphic designer and UX designer. And is there still the slides? I'm not seeing the slide. But okay, then I'll just look at my.
Yeah, the slide should still be up.
Okay, I just see. Okay, so the next steps are another learning that we had was when we were looking at the different WGU skills statements. We had no idea. We realized it was so in depth. Like, it wasn't just like, what is active learning? But they went through just like, there was like 50 different RSDs for active learning. And that actually made us improve our career profiles, and had us, when we did interview professionals for our career profiles, we asked a lot more questions, and our interview was actually much longer. So I really thank the WG database for that, because that was a great learning. So the next steps are, we're going to finish the employer validation surveys. We do have a few left to go. And then we're going to upload all the hard and soft skills to this Gladeo profile, which you see on the screen, and then connect those skills to skill building courses. And then once they finish the course, they can put it into their skills wallet, because every single learner has the dashboard and has a little virtual resume. And then once that happens, the California Department of Education is going to, so we're still working on this, because we have like 48 more careers to do. They're going to roll it out to every K through 12 school districts throughout California. So there's a huge project backed by LA County kind of leading the way, but it's really in partnership with the California Department of Education. And then once we do that, we're not doing next industry, agriculture, then infrastructure, and there's been funding for that. So we're really excited. And like Colin said, this economy, creative economy, actually is one of the industries where skills is already kind of the most important thing, which is great. They don't really look at the credential as much. They don't look at, you didn't have to go to Harvard to be a great creator. I mean, Hollywood, half the people are dropouts, right? So it really was skill-based, portfolio-based. So actually, I really love that this was the first industry that we started with, because people were very receptive, very excited, and they really think skills-based education is definitely to do with inclusivity and equity, and that's a huge part of the mission of Gladeo. So that's pretty much it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. And I really want to emphasize the starting small. You know, when we think about these projects, it's so overwhelming when you look at the big picture and what we want to scale. And that was, I think back some of the first conversations we had with our project leads about the scope and balancing the scope and scale with what we're able to accomplish within these 3 or 4 months with the OSN Collaborative. So thank you so much for sharing that learning. Next up, we have RSDs for transdisciplinary researchers, and this project team was led by Nick Kearns out of the University of Auckland. So pass it over to Nick.
Thanks, Colin. Kia ora koutou katoa. Hello to all of you. I'm from Waipapa Te Rau, University of Auckland. So this project is about researcher development. Researcher development is an established field of practice concerned with achieving a sustained uplift to people's capacity and willingness to undertake research. It has behavioral, attitudinal, and intellectual components. If we just move to the next slide. So usually researcher development is conceptualized as something like this. This is the Vitae researcher development framework, and you can see it's a series of domains. So knowledge and ability domains, subdomains, and descriptors. And our project was interested to know, well, can you actually have multiple frameworks for different disciplinary contexts and career stages, which has led us to a database approach and interest in the RSD movement by OSN. If we move to the next slide. So how RSDs could help with researcher development. A comprehensive database comprised of RSDs can be manipulated into a series of different researcher profiles based on disciplinary context and career stage. Those RSDs can be used to tag information in our institutional systems to increase their findability and accessibility and allow for personalization of content based on the user's individual context, their career stage, and disciplinary context. It also forms the basis for self-assessment tools in terms of allowing researchers to understand what they need to know in that given context and their proficiency in different skills domains. And so for the researcher, there's RSDs would enable that self-assessment and enhance the findability and accessibility of information in our systems. We just move to the next slide. So the approach we've adopted is to host a series of workshops with our researchers late last year, using a combination of online workshops and tablet boards to provide opportunity for researchers to articulate in their own words skills required for transdisciplinary research and research in specific disciplinary areas. We then did some content analysis on those responses to identify skills domains and categories, and then used the RSD guidance provided through the OSN pilot to articulate RSDs and enter them into the OSMIT pilot tool. Future directions and learnings, sustainability. For developing a skills database, it has to be sustainable. It has to be part of our normal operations and academic and curriculum cycle in a university for it to be sustainable. We need it to be holistic. It needs to be a common language for researcher development and academic development, which is generally concerned with teaching and learning development. So we need a common language across those streams. We recognize universities already have a vast repository of skills if we consider learning outcomes to be skills, in the sense that by the end of this course, you will be able to do X, Y, and Z, and they are skills statements in a way. So we are interested, and it's good to hear about Jonathan's project in terms of how you integrate skills with learning outcomes for university courses. And then we've got the perennial challenge of making sure that any database software or tool that is used to host skills is interoperable with our other systems that we have at the university. So I'll probably race through that in less than 5 minutes, but happy to field questions at the end. And a big thanks to Angela Hernandez at WGU Colin and the team at LEF and all of the OSN community. And it's been actually a real privilege to have this opportunity to chat to you all and learn about your approaches to skills. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nick. And as you were kind of wrapping up there, you nailed a bunch of like what I consider the buzzwords in the space, right? It's sustainability, interoperability, common language. These are challenges for any one project, but when you're working with universities, when you're trying to work with self assertions and validated skills, you know, all of those buzzwords are critically important for the project work. So thank you so much for sharing your experience, and we'll move on to our next group, which was the University of Washington Continuum College. This project team was led by Bryan Blakely, and they worked on RSD implementation at their university level. So Bryan.
Thanks, Colin. Nice to see everybody on the webinar here. I'm excited to talk a little bit about what we did at the University of Washington Continuum College. Like a good academic, I have no graphs and I have only words for you. So I'll go through this pretty quick. I wanted to start out by saying a little bit about the Continuum College. We serve about 60,000 learners a year in the Puget Sound region of Washington, as well as around the United States and the world. We have 92 different certificate programs and a number of other programs that we support. That's in the non-credit space, and then we also support some of our campus partners in their fully online programs. And so I mentioned that as background because what we really were trying to solve for in joining this collaborative was to understand how we could attach useful skills and the metadata thereby to micro-credentials that we are already interested in offering as part of those 92 certificate programs. So what we really wanted to understand was, with a current base of sort of content and assessments and things already in place, what existed that we could attach to that in a meaningful way, and then help our students leverage the sort of skills-based and micro-credential enabled ecosystem there. So we did a couple different things. One, we worked closely with the team at WGU to stand up an instance of Osmit. And that was a really interesting experience. I think there are a lot of really interesting things about Osmit in terms of its ability to put RSDs in libraries and to do the linking with Badger in particular, which I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but my co-lead on this project was Cheryl Grant, who is, I think, in the audience here today. And one of the things that we were really interested in doing was, I'm sure that most of you have now seen that WGU has started making a number of their skills taxonomies available to other folks. And so we wanted to see if we could use sort of what was already out in the landscape and apply that to some of the certificates that we've already been offering. So essentially trying to use the work of others to benefit ourselves, which is what the open source community is all about, right? I'm kidding, of course. We'd also like to contribute to the open source community. We think we have, because we did spend a lot of time actually helping the WGU team troubleshoot the beta of the Osmit instance and so on. A couple things that we learned along the way. One was that the WGU RSDs, for instance, were at a very, very small grain size, as I call it. They were very, very specific skills. You heard a couple of at least one of our panelists already talk about this. One of the interesting things there is that makes total sense if you think that they're in a competency-based framework, right? And so what they're doing is they're sort of putting all of these skills together in a way that will make a competency. And so as we thought more about this, we're actually considering either just attaching RSDs at a higher grain size as far as Osmit is concerned, and attaching those to micro-credentials, or actually going towards more of a competency framework route. I noticed that Deb Everhart from Credential Engines in the chat and or in this session, and so spend some time thinking about how those things fit together, how RSDs and the credential engine sort of many-to-many relationships could work, those kinds of things. So in terms of our next steps, we are still trying to figure out whether we can support Osment as an institutional tool, given that it's open source, given that it'll continue to need care and feeding over time. We want to just understand the background there. We will continue looking at RSDs from other folks, and especially as the Federation of Osment starts to get up and running, which we're excited about, develop some of our own. And then I actually think for the community here, the biggest thing is working closely with Cheryl, and Cheryl being at Badger, she's thinking a lot, and we were thinking a lot about how do we help our own staff or staff at another institution actually understand RSDs and how they fit with micro-credentials and how they fit with credential engine and how they play in this whole landscape of micro-credentials and the skills-based hiring and all of those kinds of things. And so we're actually going to be creating sort of an onboarding guide, something that's hopefully really easy for folks to look at. So with that, I'll pass it on to the next participant.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. And you just casually kind of breezed through standing up your own instance of Osment, which for this round of collaboratives was a huge accomplishment. I think in the spring last year, we had a number of teams helping to put some of those ideas into Osment without actually being able to interact with it. And your team was the first of this collaborative to stand it up and to play around with it. So cheers to you and your tech team and everybody involved in making that happen. So we'll move on to our last and final group, which is Pluralsight, and Jessica Talisman of Pluralsight will share a little bit about the OSN alignment initiative that she and her team worked through. And they also had some technical challenges with permissioning and some of the reality of organizational permissions and structures and open source tools. So just want to put that out there because their team worked through a lot that was an unknown and unexpected challenge right at the start. So thanks for persevering through that. We'll hand it over to Jessica.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Talisman. I'm senior taxonomist with Pluralsight, which is an educational technology platform. We were assigned or tasked with, and mostly volunteered, out of interest because Pluralsight does teach technology skills. Our platform is a global platform that offers upskilling, which is very much needed and very current issue within the global economy, especially for corporations and also for people looking to change careers. So with that, we were looking at the Pluralsight OSN alignment initiative, which is what we titled our project. And it was working with Western Governors University because Western Governors has content, Pluralsight content, which they offer to students within their LMS or learning management system. So we had two questions that we established at the start of the project, which is, will the Osment tool enable rapid and collaborative alignment and RSDs to content? And that's Pluralsight content living in Western Governors learning management system, and what standards are necessary to scale RSDs across Pluralsight's full library should we choose or be interested or want to, after this proof of concept, integrate or use Osment as a tool to start to develop Pluralsight's own RSDs. I took this quote directly from Western Governors because I really liked it. Next slide, please. So we chose a certain domain, which is information systems security professional. And that is a collection of courses that exists within Western Governors University's learning system. So then aligning that to Pluralsight's content, because we obviously have a purview into what that content looks like on our side. Next slide, please. In the process of aligning, we had a total of 106 RSDs that we were working with in our collection. So it's really interesting because we were able to organize the information cybersecurity space into a very concise collection, which was a great aspect of the tool. And this gives you an idea of what different aspects of the RSD looks like. So the risk assessment and management, that specifically is the course, or what it looks like from within Pluralsight's platform, both in the app and the web. And then the RSD itself, able to align with ONET job roles and certifications that exist that are aligned with that same topic and with the occupations. So when we were looking at, one thing that stuck out to us was the alignments with information assurance and Pluralsight cybersecurity, which was critical, a critical component. One thing that we were curious about was like with employers, information systems security, and looking, and this stuck out to us, is if we're looking at employers or we're looking at job groups, how to expand or get more accurate alignment with employers and job roles. Next slide, please. So what we discovered, end result, OSMIT is indeed a promising tool, and it enables collaboration, which was great. We were able to create collections so that we could keep the RSDs focused in one solid space to help with the alignment efforts, and our ability to quickly edit, align, and customize or really tailor the RSDs to the training content. And those were our successes. In terms of what we see as improvements, and with the OSMIT tool, this being open source and this being a pilot, is we need the ability to reflect edits in real time when collaborating, so that one of the issues is duplication. And so that leads to the next point, which is looking at ways to validate RSDs to avoid duplication, to make sure that we're not duplicating RSDs aligned to content and assigning similar or almost the same RSD to a piece of content. And the last one was to desire to have functions such as linking to taxonomies by category. And that's something that came up throughout the process in our meetings, our weekly cadence meetings, was categories. And right now there's only the ability to align one category, and we are interested in aligning perhaps more than one category, because I think RSDs can be multidimensional. Next slide, please. The next and final portion was, this is an extract from the W3.org Open Skills Network alignment types. And this was another area of improvement that we also saw was necessary. And this is what happens. The beauty of open source and collaboration is the need to normalize and develop standards. So unified criteria and the ability, you know, when we define major alignment, broad alignment, exact alignment, minor alignment, which it does follow SCOS, the ontology, to a certain extent, but departs from it in other ways. This is an entirely, this is an intricate structure in and of itself in terms of the alignment types. And we found that there could be many different alignment types, but if there's some uniform, standardized components in order to help to normalize this data, this is something that we're interested in. The other thing that we found was keywords were populated, and the keywords, in fact, were phrases. And this was another area that we thought could actually use improvement. And again, that happens with collaboration and feedback. So when you find exact phrases, sentences, course titles as a keyword, it's not exactly a keyword. And so we wanted to help give feedback and improving on that portion. Next slide, please. So opportunities for enhancement. And obviously this is a very global, where we have domain content and the linking ontology, or use of ontologies, where you go from the pragmatic to the semantic. So another, what we saw, we were able to really understand the vision, the greater open world context for this tool and for OSN, and the ability to grow the tool to help to create a standardized and utilitarian way for the world to talk about skills and jobs and opportunities and roles. Next slide, please. So information system security, this is what it looked like, just to give you, this was an end result. It's published on WGU's site, which is great. And so you can actually see on WGU's site the OSMIT tool in action and OSN's work in action, and view the entire collection, download it, copy the JSON, and it's beautiful. Next slide. And so all in all, end result and our takeaways from this whole experience was, and this is from the Pluralsight, from Pluralsight's interface and our application, is the idea, and others have spoken to this, is the idea of earning badges, sort of being able to track credentials, of motivating learners, and for creating a global economy of skills. And so I think that Pluralsight and OSN absolutely align on this, and we're really appreciative of the opportunity to participate in the pilot.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jessica, and the team at Pluralsight. I know it really was a team effort for all of these projects, not just the Pluralsight team, but finding ways to collaborate on very specific tasks related to, you know, the scope of the individual work. And one of the things I wanted to just highlight there is some of that feedback that was offered about the OSN tool OSMIT, and how that some of the functions and the features can be enhanced or improved upon for the next iteration of the tool. And that really is part of this community, and what I've seen and the team at Learning Economy has seen by working with all these partners over the last year is that the collective is much smarter than any one group. And so we continue to iterate and learn together. And OSN has a number of working groups that anybody is free to join, but I know that many of the members of past collaboratives and pilots have been some of the most valuable members to contributing when contributing to those working groups, because they have experience working with some of the tools that OSN offers and really trying to integrate what is available in the open source community with some organizational structures or project goals. So thank you for helping to navigate all of those challenges and implementations with us. And so we did want to take a little time to have a question and answer. I know many questions have been being shared in the chat here, but if there were any specific questions for any specific members of our presentation today, feel free to just throw those in the chat. And I know that we just passed the 60-minute mark, and many have hard stops on the half hour, on the hour. So if any of you are taking off, we just want to thank you for joining us today. But for those that are able to stay, we've got a little time for a few questions. So feel free to drop those in the chat. Let's see, I'm scrolling back through up to the early beginnings. One, and I think this was maybe answered later, but it was a wonky question about measuring precision and recall on the mappings, given there really isn't good labels on job recs for measuring AI model performance. I think there was some response there, but wasn't sure if anyone on the panel wanted to talk. I think that might have been directed more toward the IQ4 team who was working with AI, if they wanted to bring to light some of the mapping work that they did.
Hi, sure. So, I mean, I kind of answered the question in the chat, but you don't actually need a whole ton of labeled data nowadays. The sort of state-of-the-art language models are trained on millions and billions sometimes of unlabeled text, which you can then fine-tune on your own domain data. In our case, we used millions of job recs. It's called task adaptive domain pre-training. You can then fine-tune that even further on a small amount of labeled data, and you only need in the hundreds of examples. So it's actually these language models in the last few years have come a long way. At the end of the day, yes, you're getting semantic similarity in terms of distributional semantics, which is not the same as having an ontology in the sense that Jessica was describing, which is a whole nother beast and has lots of advantages over language models. But my goal is actually to combine these technologies in a neural symbolic fashion and hopefully get the best of both worlds.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I see we have some thank yous coming in and people taking off. So I'll encourage others to put your contact information in the chat to connect with others, as has been happening throughout all of this. But I just one more time want to thank all of our leads that presented here today and project team members that presented. And thank you for the incredible amount of work that has been put in over the last 4 months. And from the Learning Economy team side, it's been such a pleasure collaborating with all of you. We have learned so much alongside with you, and just appreciate the opportunity to collaborate and help to grow this ecosystem. And many familiar names and faces that were in the chat today. Thank you for attending, and we're very excited to see this community continue to grow and evolve. And of course, we want to thank the OSN team and all of the fantastically talented skills architects who were kind of mentioned by name just at random times throughout the presentations, but they are an incredibly talented team that helped to really implement a lot of what was presented here today. So thank you to the skills architects, WGU, OSN, and all of our project team leads and members for all the incredible work to make these OSN Skills Collaboratives a success this year. So thanks for joining, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you out in the ecosystem, in the skills world, in the very near future. Take care.